Ifeoma's blood ran cold as her heart raced. She pressed her ear to the door, her heart pounding. New one? Killed? What were they talking about? She asked herself. Ugo continued. Well, she seemed like she would be obedient enough. Let's make sure she doesn't catch on too quickly. Ifeoma's mind raced. What did they mean by catch on? She remembered the kind smiles and warm gestures. But now they seemed like a cruel couple. Fear crept into her heart as she realized she might be in serious trouble. She quietly stepped back from the door, her thoughts spinning. They had referred to her as a new one, implying there had been others before her. What had happened to them? The joy in their voices as they spoke about her was unsettling. Ifeoma sat on her bed, trying to process what she just heard. She knew she needed to be more cautious and vigilant. The kind couple who had promised to take care of her were hiding a dark secret, and her safety depended on her. As she lay down that night, Ifeoma's mind raced with plans. She needed to find a way to protect herself if things turned dangerous. Her parents' faces appeared in her mind, making her feel emotional and cry a little. Ifeoma put her bags down and lay on the bed, her mind racing with different thoughts about the couple. Just as she started to drift off, the door burst open. Nkechi stormed in, her face twisted in anger. "Get up!" Nkechi shouted, delivering a powerful slap across Ifeoma's face. Ifeoma cried out in pain, her hand immediately going to her cheek. "What did I do?" she asked, tears welling up in her eyes. "Go make dinner," Nkechi demanded, her voice cold and harsh. "You think you can just laze around here? You're here to work." Shocked and scared, Ifeoma hurried to the kitchen. She could hear Ugo and Nkechi laughing in the living room, their cruel voices echoing through the house. "Did you see her face?" Ugo laughed. "She thought she was going to live a fairy tale here." "Well, she's in for a rude awakening," Nkechi replied, her tone dripping with malice. "We will see how long she lasts." Ifeoma's hands shook as she prepared dinner, her tears falling into the food. She felt a deep sense of fear. How could people be so kind one moment and so cruel the next? When dinner was ready, Ifeoma served it and then sat at the table, too upset to eat. Ugo and Nkechi dug in, laughing and shouting as if nothing had happened. "You are not eating?" Ugo asked with mock concern. "What's wrong, Ifeoma? Not hungry?" Ifeoma shook her head, her stomach in knots. "I'm not hungry," she whispered. Nkechi smirked. "Then get out of our presence this minute. You see food and you're rejecting it. No longer food for you in this house." They continued to eat, throwing glances at Ifeoma and laughing at her misery. Ifeoma felt a wave of despair wash over her. She was alone and trapped in a house with two people who clearly enjoyed her suffering. After dinner, Ugo and Nkechi continued to insult Ifeoma, making jokes at her expense of her dead parents and laughing at her tears. She went to bed hungry and scared, her body aching from the slap and her heart heavy with fear. As she lay in the dark room, Ifeoma thought about her parents and the life she had lost. She missed them terribly and wished she could be with them instead of this nightmare. The next morning, Ifeoma woke up to see her foster parents, Ugo and Nkechi, doing something that left her speechless and tears rolling out of her eyes. The morning sun was already streaming through her window. She rubbed her eyes and slowly got out of bed, the effect of hunger making her weak. As she made her way to the living room, she heard the distinct snipping sound of scissors and the cruel laughter of Ugo and Nkechi. Her heart sank as she cautiously approached the source of the noise. In the middle of the room, Ugo and Nkechi were busy cutting her clothes into shreds. They laughed loudly as they destroyed each piece, turning her belongings into worthless scraps of fabric. "What are you doing?" Ifeoma asked, her voice trembling with a mix of fear and confusion. Nkechi looked up with a smirk. "Oh, look who's awake. Just in time to see the show." Ugo held up a piece of her once favorite dress. "Making some improvements to your wardrobe," he said mockingly. Ifeoma's eyes filled with tears. "Why are you doing this? What did I do to deserve this?" Nkechi rolled her eyes. "You still don't get it, do you? You're not here to wear nice clothes. You're here to work and nothing else." "But why are you treating me so badly?" Ifeoma persisted, her voice crackling. "Why are you doing this to me?" Ugo and Nkechi exchanged a look before bursting into a cruel laughter. "You didn't do anything, Ifeoma," Ugo said, shaking his head. "You are just the unlucky one who ended up with us." Nkechi added, "We needed a new slave, and you were the perfect choice." Ifeoma got angry. "This isn't fair. I don't deserve to be treated like this." Ugo's smile vanished, replaced by an angry stare. "You think you have a choice? You think you can talk back to us?" Nkechi stepped forward, her face twisted with fury. "You're nothing but a slave, Ifeoma. You do what we say, when we say it. Understand?" Ifeoma felt a surge of defiance. "No, I don't understand. Why did you even adopt me if you were going to treat me like this?" Their laughter grew louder, more mocking. "Oh, poor little Ifeoma," Nkechi taunted. "You think we care about you? You're here to do all the work, nothing more." Before Ifeoma could react, Shuka grabbed her arm and pushed her to the floor. "Enough questions," he snapped. "You need to learn your place." Nkechi joined in, and together they began to beat Ifeoma, their blows landing with brutal force. She cried out in pain, trying to shield herself, but they were relentless. "Stop! Please stop!" Ifeoma begged, tears streaming down her face. Ugo sneered, "This is just the beginning. You will learn to control your mouth, or you will suffer." Then Nkechi quickly went inside and grabbed a razor blade. "Hold her legs in place. I want to teach her a lesson." Ugo did as Nkechi said, as she began to use the razor blade to cut the soles of Ifeoma's feet, laughing as they watched her blood flow out. Nkechi added, "Consider this your first lesson." Finally, they stepped back, leaving Ifeoma crumpled on the floor, her body aching and her leg seriously bruised. As they walked away, laughing and talking as if nothing had happened, Ifeoma lay there, her body completely broken. Ifeoma's feet were suffering excruciating pain from the cuts inflicted by Ugo and Nkechi. Each step felt like walking on shards of glass, but she had no choice but to endure it. The couple showed no compassion, forcing her to complete all the household chores regardless of her injuries. "Get up and clean this mess," Ugo shouted one morning, glaring at Ifeoma as she struggled to rise. "I'm trying," Ifeoma whispered, her voice trembling as she attempted to stand. "Trying isn't good enough," Nkechi snapped, kicking a dirty dish towards her. "You better get this place spotless before we return." Despite her agony, Ifeoma set to work, scrubbing floors, washing dishes, and doing laundry. Every moment was torture, but stopping was not an option. Her feet left a pattern of blood on the floor as she walked, a testament of her suffering. Days stretched into weeks, and the couple's cruelty only intensified. They deliberately starved her, leaving Ifeoma to survive on their discarded scraps. She often found herself picking at their chewed bones, just to stave off the relentless hunger. "Is this all I get?" Ifeoma asked one evening, her voice barely a whisper as she looked at the meager scraps on the table. Nkechi sneered, "Be grateful you get anything at all. You don't deserve more." Ugo added, "You should be used to it by now. After all, you are just a slave." On particularly bad days, when the couple was having a bad day, they would take out their frustrations on Ifeoma. The beatings were savage, leaving her battered and bruised. "Why do you always do this?" Ifeoma cried one day, tears streaming down her face after a particularly brutal beating. Ugo's face twisted with rage. "Because you're worthless. You think you can question us." Nkechi chimed in, "You're here to serve us, not to ask questions. Remember that." The assaults continued until Ifeoma collapsed on the floor one day after an intensified beating. Ifeoma opened her eyes slowly and saw herself in her bed, her body aching from the previous night's intensified beating. Every muscle protested as she tried to sit up, her feet throbbing with pain from the cuts. She could hear the murmur of voices downstairs, indicating the presence of a visitor. Gathering her strength, she forced herself to get up and head downstairs to attend to her chores. As she limped into the living room, she saw Ugo and Nkechi entertaining a middle-aged woman. The visitor noticed Ifeoma immediately. "Oh my goodness, what happened to your leg, dear?" the woman asked, her voice filled with concern. Ifeoma hesitated, glancing at Ugo and Nkechi. They were both glaring at her with stern, warning looks. She knew the consequences of speaking the truth. I fell down the stairs," Ifeoma stammered, lowering her eyes. The visitor frowned, clearly not convinced. "Are you sure? Those look like deep cuts. How did you manage to fall like that?" Ugo quickly interjected, his tone overly cheerful. "Ifeoma can be quite clumsy sometimes. We've told her to be more careful." Nkechi added with a forced smile, "Yes, we were so worried when it happened. But she's healing well, aren't you, Ifeoma?" Ifeoma nodded slowly, her heart pounding. "Yes, ma'am." The visitor's eyes still fixed on Ifeoma, a mix of doubt and pity evident on her face. "If you need anything there, don't hesitate to ask." "Thank you," Ifeoma whispered, forcing a small smile. After the visitor left, Ugo and Nkechi turned their anger on Ifeoma. "Why did you hesitate?" Ugo hissed. "Thank goodness you didn't say anything stupid," Ugo said. his voice dripping with menace as he turned to Ifeoma. But if you ever think about telling the truth, you will wish you were never born. Nkechi stepped closer, her eyes cold. Remember, you say nothing to anyone. If you ever think about telling the truth, you will even regret it. Ifeoma nodded, fear tightening her chest. I understand. The couple stormed off, leaving Ifeoma alone with her thoughts. The encounter with the visitor gave her a sliver of hope. She realized there were people out there who could help her if she could just find the courage and the opportunity to reach out. I have to find a way, she murmured to herself. There has to be a way out of this. Ifeoma sank onto a chair, her mind racing. She knew she couldn't endure this abuse forever. The thought of running away had crossed her mind many times. But the fear of what Ugo and Nkechi might do if they caught her always held her back. What if they find me? She murmured to herself. What if they hurt me even worse? I have to be careful, she thought, her eyes darting around the room. I can't let them know I'm planning anything. Days turned into weeks, and Ifeoma continued to endure the couple's maltreatment. One evening, while cleaning the kitchen, Ifeoma overheard Ugo and Nkechi talking in the next room. We need to be more careful, Ugo said. That visitor was too nosy. We can't afford to have people asking questions. Nkechi sighed. I know, but we have to keep her in line. If she talks, we are finished. Ifeoma was busy thinking of what she heard when she didn't notice that they had stopped talking. Nkechi came out of the room and caught Ifeoma with her eyes placed on the door. Ugo and Nkechi returned home one evening, their faces twisted with anger and frustration. The moment they stepped through the door, Ifeoma could sense the storm coming. She tried to keep out of their way, but it was no use. Ifeoma, Ugo barked. Get over here now. Ifeoma hurried to the living room, her heart pounding. Yes, sir. You useless girl, Nkechi spat. We had a terrible day at work, and now we come home to this mess. She gestured wildly at the perfectly cleaned room. I'm sorry, Ifeoma stammered. But the house is clean, ma. I cleaned it twice myself. Wait a minute. What did you say? Ugo shouted, raising his hands. Are you trying to call us liars? Without another word, Ugo and Nkechi began to beat her. Their frustration from work was taken out on Ifeoma, who cried out in pain with each blow. She tried to protect herself, but they were relentless. Please stop, Ifeoma begged through her tears. I'm sorry, please. But they didn't stop. They hit her until she could barely stand, then shoved her aside as if she were nothing. Ifeoma lay on the floor, her body throbbing with pain, tears streaming down her face. Nkechi looked down at her with disdain. Get out of our sight. We don't want to see your face. Ifeoma struggled to her feet and limped to her room. She collapsed onto her tin mattress, her body shaking with sobs. The pain was unbearable, but even worse when the sense of hopelessness that threatened to overwhelm her. Why is this happening to me? She whispered to herself. What did I do to deserve this? As she lay there, broken and hungry, she knew she couldn't go on like this. The couple refused to feed her that night, leaving her to starve. Her stomach rumbled as she went to bed broken and hungry. Ifeoma knew she couldn't endure the torture any longer. The constant beatings, the starvation, the cruelty had pushed her to her limit. She had to escape. Every night, as she lay in her bed, she thought about how she would get away from Ugo and Nkechi. Over the next few days, Ifeoma secretly packed her essentials in a small bag. Some food, a bottle of water, the small blanket she had hidden, and a few other necessities. She knew she had to be ready to move quickly when the time came. Finally, one night, she decided it was time. She waited until Ugo and Nkechi had gone to bed, listening carefully to make sure they were asleep. The house was silent, except for the ticking of the clock. Ifeoma glanced at the clock. It was 2 a.m., the perfect time to make her move. She took a deep breath and tiptoed to the door, her heart pounding in her chest. This is it, she thought. Finally, I can get away from all this torture. She carefully opened the door, trying to make a little noise as possible. The cool night air greeted her, and she felt a glimmer of hope. She was almost free. But just as she stepped outside, she heard a voice behind her. Ifeoma! Nkechi shouted from her room. Where do you think you're going to? Ifeoma froze, her heart racing. She turned around to see Nkechi standing in the doorway of her room, her eyes blazing with anger. If you like this story, please don't forget to like and comment continue for the next part. Have a nice day.